all enlightenment is spontaneous. That's because it doesn't happen to an individual, a someone. It's actually our natural state when the unnatural or erroneous identification with the I or personhood collapses. That's why all the so-called enlightened sages confirm that enlightenment never happens to a person. If a person claims Bodhi, awakening, and believes that occurred to a separate self, person, living being, or lifespan, that person is not Bodhi, said the Buddha. And that is why they also confirm, should the false identity collapse and the apparent separate being be returned to its natural, awake, and pure state, it is always spontaneous, never the result of any paths or practices done by the individual. A day will dawn when you see the futility of all personal practices and laugh at your past efforts. What you realize on the day you laugh is also here and now, said Ramana Maharshi. Enlightenment is an accident. Practices just appear to make you more accident-prone. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. So all awakening or enlightenment, which is just the collapse of the limited identity mind places on the limitless, is always spontaneous, stunning, and unexpected. Upon hearing this, inquiring minds want to know, in the case of those whose egos famously suddenly collapsed, what caused it? Is there anything we can point to that precipitated this radical shift in identity, experienced by committed practitioners like Buddha and Vivekananda, and non-practitioners like Eckhart Tolle, Suzanne Siegel, and Franklin Merrill-Wolf alike? Mind, the ego identity, is a simple two-function machine, ensuring survival and seeking pleasure over pain, maximum pleasure with no or minimum suffering. Now, from earliest childhood, the illusory body-mind identity learns and remembers ploys and patterns for attempting to attain and maintain these two goals. As long as the body-mind identity believes it has some modicum of control over these outcomes, these will become ensconced in the mind's habitual go-tos for navigating its individual life. If the person is naturally head-oriented, they will automatically trust that their thoughts, their thinking, and figure out will provide them the way out of most every problem and lead them back to wellness and pleasure, if only they think through things very carefully in the right order and with maximum input. If they're more body-oriented, they will go to the body's health, strength, avoidance of pain, and maximum enjoyment of the physical form to return to longevity and sustained pleasure. Out of overpowering habit, the body-mind will always and immediately turn to these known strategies to ensure survival and minimize suffering. Only when all these mental and physical tactics utterly fail will the mind surrender its illusion of control. Only then is there a possibility for a collapse of the false identity and a stunning revelation of the perfection of being. Buddha left a life of opulence and privilege and spent years in rigorous austerities like fasting and celibacy and in deep contemplation and meditation, none of which culminated in his awakening. After 6 years of fruitless and self-destructive effort, he realized he could not produce the result he longed for, sat down, supposedly under the bo tree, and gave up, relinquishing his seeking and all his efforts, determined to not move from that spot, even if he simply rotted and died there. With all efforts of the mind and body spent, both stopped, and he saw his true nature. Vivekananda practiced all meditations, scripture study, bhakta, and austerities, long and hard, under the tutelage of his great sage master Sri Ramakrishna. But even with the guidance of this great master, the enlightenment he sought seemed eternally elusive. Frustrated, pacing to and fro, and nearly out of his mind with longing, Ramakrishna ordered him to stop all thinking and fretting. He reached down for a stray piece of sharp glass and thrust it in the space between Viveka's eyebrows. Now, readers of this story might think it was the touch of the master or the thrust of the glass that somehow penetrated to and opened Vivekananda's third eye that caused his awakening. In reality, it was the total stoppage and surrender of his mind's and body's efforts to produce the result that allowed the radical self to be revealed. Swiss music professor Jean Klein practiced yoga at home. During a visit to India, while simply walking on a road, a flock of birds took flight across the sky. At first, he witnessed the spectacle from the normal, identified perspective. He, as a separate individual, watching a scene take place in the universe outside him. Suddenly and unexpectedly, the entire universe, sky, scene, and the flight of the flock appeared inside him, and there was no separate location watching. No separation between him and the cosmos. Eckhart Tolle had long suffered a life of depression and anxiety and was quite ready to end his useless life, giving up all efforts to simply regain peace and sanity, let alone spiritual awakening. In his case, there was no prior practice of meditation or spiritual path. He concluded that with his level of mental anguish, he could no longer live with himself. But that same conclusion brought about the deepest questions of self-inquiry. Am I two? Am I even one? What am I? The total inability of his mind to figure this out, coupled with his body's inability to provide any path to relief, apparently allowed an entire collapse of his clinging identity with body and mind the I dissolved, and what remained found itself to be this everything, all of being. As you can see, awakening or enlightenment can never be produced as cause and effect, and simply cannot happen to a someone. It literally cannot leave a person it happened to in its wake. So now you can cease thinking it will ever happen to you through any choice, control, or practices of your own. Once again, we can return to the wisdom of one who is gone, Ramana Maharshi, simply because we can't say it any better than he did. He said, "You impose limits on your true nature of infinite being. Then you get displeased to be only a limited creature. Then you begin spiritual practices to transcend these non-existent limits. But if your practice itself implies or confirms the existence of these limits, how could they also allow you to transcend them?" Give up your search for enlightenment, for some self-created spiritual awakening. The universe is only made of its boundless love for itself, and it is perfect. Be just in this moment, spontaneous. Be as you are. I hope that's helpful. Thank you for listening. Let's talk again soon.